Welcome to Animal Uncovered, the podcast where we explore the most unbelievable life cycles in the natural world. From the moment life begins to the moment it ends, nothing is as simple as it seems. In the perpetual twilight of the mesopelagic zone, 600 meters beneath the Pacific's surface, something extraordinary unfolds in the darkness. A creature moves through the water column with an elegance that defies its extraordinary proportions. 20 feet of undulating silver flesh, crowned with a crest of crimson spines like some ancient monarch's headdress. The oarfish rises vertically through the black water, its body rippling in slow hypnotic waves. This is not the dramatic hunt of a great white, nor the frenzied dance of a school fleeing predators. This is something altogether more alien, more mysterious. The oarfish maintains its upright posture, head pointed toward a surface it can never safely reach, as if standing at attention in the vast cathedral of the deep sea. Its enormous eyes, adapted to capture the faintest glimmers of bioluminescence, scan the water for the minute specks of life that sustain it. The creature's ribbon-like dorsal fin, brilliant red and impossibly long, extends the entire length of its body, rippling with hundreds of fin rays in a continuous wave of motion. This is locomotion reduced to its most elegant essence. No thrashing, no wasted energy, just pure, efficient movement through three-dimensional space. The oarfish is both searching and being searched for, both predator and prey in this alien realm where sunlight has never reached. But then, something changes. Perhaps it's a shift in water temperature, or the subtle chemistry of internal hormones reaching a critical threshold. The oarfish begins to move with purpose now, leaving behind its normal hunting grounds. It's embarking on a journey that scientists are only beginning to understand, toward a destination and a transformation that remains one of the ocean's most closely guarded secrets. This is a story written in the deepest waters, a life cycle played out in darkness, a biography that humankind has only glimpsed in fragments. This is the insane life cycle of the oarfish. Part 1. Why this animal matters. For as long as humans have gazed upon the ocean's surface, we have wondered what lurks beneath. Our imaginations have conjured sea serpents of terrifying proportions, dragons that could drag entire ships to their doom. Medieval maps bore the warning, "Here be dragons" at the edges of known waters. For centuries, sailors' tales of ribbon-like monsters rising from the depths were dismissed as fantasy, the fevered imaginings of men too long at sea. And then, occasionally, impossibly, the ocean would cast one of these creatures onto a beach, and the myth would become flesh. The oarfish is real, magnificently, bewilderingly real. These are the longest bony fish in the world, with confirmed specimens reaching over 30 feet in length and unverified reports suggesting they might grow to twice that size. Imagine a creature whose body is longer than a double-decker bus, yet so compressed laterally that it's no thicker than a man's hand. A fish that looks like it was designed by someone who took the basic template and simply decided to stretch it, adding vertebra after vertebra, until something magnificent and utterly improbable emerged. But length is merely the beginning of the oarfish's strangeness. These creatures live in a realm that remains, even in our age of deep-sea submersibles and satellite technology, profoundly mysterious. The mesopelagic zone, the twilight realm between 200 and 1,000 meters depth, is home to more biomass than all the world's surface waters combined, yet we know less about its ecology than we do about the surface of Mars. The oarfish is one of its most enigmatic inhabitants, a creature so rarely seen alive that every sighting makes scientific news, every specimen that washes ashore becomes a source of renewed study and wonder. In Japan, the oarfish is called Rugu no Tsukai, the messenger from the sea god's palace. According to folklore, these fish rise from their deep realm to warn humanity of impending earthquakes. While science has found no evidence for this prophetic ability, the myth speaks to something profound. The oarfish appears to us at the boundaries between worlds, at moments when the deep ocean reveals itself in ways both beautiful and terrible. They are creatures of threshold, of transition, of the spaces between what we know and what remains mysterious. And it is their life cycle that may be most mysterious of all. How does an animal that can grow to 30 feet or more begin its existence? How does it survive in the crushing darkness of the deep? How does it find a mate in the vastness of the ocean? How does it reproduce? These are questions that, even now, we can answer only partially, piecing together a biography from fragments, from rare observations, from the anatomy of specimens caught by accident or cast ashore by chance. The central question driving our exploration today is this: how does one of Earth's longest, strangest, most elusive fish live out its existence in the least accessible ecosystem on the planet? What does the life cycle of a creature look like when it unfolds almost entirely beyond human observation? And what can the oarfish teach us about the vast portions of our own planet that remain, in every meaningful sense, alien to us? Part 2. Evolution and Origin. To understand the oarfish, we must travel back in time. Not years, not centuries, but eons. The evolutionary story of the oarfish is a story of adaptation to one of Earth's most stable, yet challenging environments. It is a story written in fossil records and molecular clocks, in anatomical features that speak to ancient origins and modern specializations. The oarfish belongs to the order Lampriformes, a peculiar and diverse group of fishes that includes the opa, the ribbon fishes, and several other deep-sea dwellers. These fishes share certain characteristics that mark them as distinct from most other teleosts, the bony fishes that dominate modern oceans. Lampriformes tend toward elongation, toward lateral compression, toward life in the deep midwaters where conventional fish body plans give way to more exotic forms. The fossil record of Lampriformes is fragmentary, as one might expect for creatures that live in environments where fossilization is rare. But what fossils we have suggest that this group has ancient roots diverging from other teleost fishes sometime in the Cretaceous period, perhaps 100 million years ago. This was the age of marine reptiles, when mosasaurs and plesiosaurs ruled the seas. The ancestors of oarfish were already present, already adapting to life in the deep midwaters, while above them the age of reptilian marine dominance played out its final chapters. But the true specialization of the oarfish, the evolutionary innovations that make it what it is today, likely occurred much more recently. The modern oarfish belongs to the family Regalacidae, which contains only two species, Regalecus glesne, the giant oarfish, and Regalecus rossli, the streamer fish, which grows to a more modest 10 to 12 feet. These two species represent the culmination of a very particular evolutionary strategy: extreme elongation combined with deep water specialization. Consider what it takes to evolve into an oarfish. First, you must add vertebrae. Most fishes have between 30 and 60 vertebrae. The oarfish has well over 400. Each one adds length, adds flexibility, allows for that distinctive undulating movement pattern that looks like nothing else in the sea. This is not simply a matter of stretching the body. It requires modifications to the muscular system, to the nervous system that must coordinate all that length, to the cardiovascular system that must pump blood through a body plan that defies the usual teleod blueprint. Then there is the question of fins. The oarfish has reduced its paired fins to an extreme degree. The pelvic fins, which in most fishes are used for stability and manoeuvring, have become elongated into thin ribbon-like structures tipped with small paddle-like expansions. They trail behind the fish-like oars, hence one of the creature's common names. The anal fin is absent entirely. And the dorsal fin, that magnificent scarlet crest, has become the primary organ of locomotion. It runs the entire length of the body from just behind the head to the tail tip, with over 400 individual fin rays, each capable of independent movement. This is fin evolution taken to an extraordinary extreme, a locomotion system that allows for precise three-dimensional movement with minimal energy expenditure. The loss of scales represents another adaptation to deep-sea life. The oarfish's body is covered not with the overlapping armour of scales, but with a smooth skin coated with guanine crystals. These crystals create the fish's characteristic silver sheen, but more importantly, they may serve multiple functions in the deep sea. They could help with camouflage in the dim light, they might reduce drag, and they may even have antimicrobial properties in an environment where wounds heal slowly. And then there are the sensory adaptations. The oarfish's eyes are large, disproportionately so for its body size. In the mesopelagic zone, where sunlight fades to the faintest blue glow, large eyes that can gather every available photon make the difference between feeding and starving, between detecting predators and becoming prey. The lateral line system, which in all fishes detects pressure waves and water movements, is highly developed in oarfish, allowing them to sense the minute disturbances created by swimming prey, even in complete darkness. Evolutionary biologists studying the oarfish and its relatives have begun to understand that extreme elongation may be an adaptation to life in a three-dimensional environment where energy is scarce. In the open ocean, there are no places to hide, no solid substrate to rest upon. Every movement costs energy, and energy in the form of food is precious. The oarfish's body plan allows it to maintain its position in the water column with minimal effort to move efficiently through all three spatial dimensions and to maximize its sensory reach. A long body means a long lateral line, able to detect prey across a wider area. But perhaps the most significant evolutionary innovation of the oarfish is one we cannot see in fossils or deduce from anatomy alone. It is the physiological adaptations that allow these creatures to survive at depths where pressure reaches 40 to 100 times that at the surface, where temperatures hover just above freezing, where oxygen levels are lower than in surface waters. The proteins in their cells, the lipids in their membranes, the enzymes that drive their metabolism, all have been fine-tuned by natural selection to function in conditions that would be instantly fatal to most other fishes. The oarfish, then, is not simply a long fish. It is a masterwork of evolutionary engineering, a suite of adaptations refined over millions of years to create an organism perfectly suited to one of Earth's most challenging ecosystems. It is a creature that shows us how life, given enough time and the right selective pressures, can mold itself into forms that seem to defy logic, that challenge our assumptions about what is possible. Part 3. The Life Cycle. And now we come to the heart of our story, to the question that has vexed marine biologists for over a century. How do oarfish live? How does the life of such a creature unfold from its first moments to its last? The honest answer is that we don't know, not completely. The oarfish's life cycle remains one of marine biology's great puzzles, a narrative we've reconstructed from fragments and inference, from the handful of observations we've managed to make. But even this incomplete picture reveals a life cycle that is, in every sense, extraordinary. Phase 1. Birth. Our story begins, as all life cycles do, with reproduction. Somewhere in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, at depths we can only estimate, adult oarfish come together to spawn. We say somewhere, and we can only estimate because incredibly humans have never observed oarfish spawning in the wild. We have never witnessed their courtship rituals, if such exist. We have never seen how these solitary creatures scattered across the immensity of the ocean find each other when the time comes to reproduce. What we do know comes from the examination of mature specimens. Female oarfish produce eggs, and they produce them in staggering numbers. The ovaries of a mature female may contain hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of eggs. Each egg is small, only a few millimeters in diameter, buoyant and transparent. The males, presumably, release clouds of milt, sperm suspended in fluid, and fertilization occurs externally in the open water. This is broadcast spawning, the oldest and perhaps simplest reproductive strategy in the fish world. It is a lottery, a numbers game played with astronomical odds. Of those hundreds of thousands of eggs released by a single female, only a tiny fraction will survive to become larvae. Of those larvae, only a handful will live to become juveniles, and of those juveniles perhaps only 1 or 2 will reach maturity and reproduce in their turn. This is the mathematics of life in the pelagic zone, where predation is constant and where any small advantage can mean the difference between lineage continuation and extinction. The fertilized eggs drift in the upper layers of the ocean. This is crucial. Despite spending their adult lives in the mesopelagic zone, young oarfish begin their existence much closer to the surface, in the epipelagic zone where sunlight still penetrates, where phytoplankton blooms fuel the entire marine food web. This is not unusual. Many deep-sea fishes begin life in surface waters, only descending as they mature. But for the oarfish, it means that every individual must make a vertical journey through hundreds of meters of water column, transitioning from light to twilight to darkness as they grow. Within days of fertilization, the eggs hatch. What emerges is unlike any fish larvae you might imagine. Oarfish larvae are bizarre even by the standards of fish larvae, which as a group represent some of the strangest stages in vertebrate development. The larva is tiny, perhaps 5 to 10 millimeters long, transparent save for its eyes and a few pigment spots. But already certain characteristics are apparent. The body is elongated, more so than most fish larvae, and there, along the back, the beginnings of that extraordinary dorsal fin are already visible. Phase 2. Juvenile phase. The larval oarfish drifts with the currents, a mote of life in the vastness. It feeds on even smaller motes, the microscopic zooplankton that bloom in surface waters, copepods and larval crustaceans and other creatures so small that most fish would not bother with them. But for a larval oarfish, these tiny organisms are everything. Growth at this stage is rapid, fueled by the abundance of food in the epipelagic zone. Weeks pass, the larva grows, its body elongates, vertebrae forming one after another down the lengthening body axis. The dorsal fin develops, those hundreds of fin rays appearing in sequence, each one a small miracle of development. The eyes grow proportionally larger. Pigmentation begins to appear, though the young fish remains largely transparent, an adaptation that provides some protection from visual predators in these well-lit waters. By the time a young oarfish reaches a length of several centimeters, it is recognizable as what it will become, though still bizarrely proportioned by adult standards. The head seems too large, the body too thin even for an oarfish. And now begins one of the most critical transitions in its life, the descent. We don't know exactly what triggers this descent. What internal or external cues tell a juvenile oarfish that it's time to leave the surface waters and begin its journey to the deep? It might be a matter of size, a genetically programmed response that activates when the fish reaches a certain length. It might be driven by changes in diet, as the young fish begins to feed on larger prey items that are more abundant at depth. It might be linked to the development of specific physiological adaptations that allow survival at higher pressures and lower temperatures. Whatever the trigger, the young oarfish begins to move downward. This is not a sudden plunge but a gradual descent, taking place over weeks or months. The fish drops through the thermocline, that boundary layer where water temperature drops sharply. It passes from the sunlit epipelagic zone into the twilight realm of the mesopelagic. This transition is fraught with danger. As the young oarfish descends, it enters new hunting grounds for new predators: lancet fishes, viperfish, hatchetfish. The mesopelagic zone is home to some of the ocean's most efficient predators, each one adapted to detect and capture prey in near-total darkness. A juvenile oarfish, still small, still relatively slow, makes tempting prey. Many, perhaps most, are lost during this transition phase, but those that survive face another challenge: physiological adaptation. The deeper you go in the ocean, the greater the pressure. At 200 meters, the pressure is 20 times that at the surface. At 500 meters, it's 50 times surface pressure. The young oarfish's body must adapt to these changing conditions as it descends. Cell membranes must adjust their lipid composition to remain flexible under pressure. Proteins must fold differently. Gas bladders, the swim bladders that give most fishes buoyancy control, must either be modified or lost entirely. The oarfish, as it happens, lacks a swim bladder as an adult, relying instead on its lipid-rich tissues and lightweight skeleton to maintain neutral buoyancy. By the time a juvenile oarfish has completed its descent and established itself in the mesopelagic zone, it might be a year old, perhaps longer. It might be anywhere from 0.5 meter to 2 meters in length. It has survived the gauntlet of early life, beat the astronomical odds that face all broadcast-spawned fishes, and now it faces the challenges of life in the deep. Phase 3. Adolescence. The mesopelagic zone is often called the twilight zone, and the name is apt. This is a realm of fading light and growing darkness, where the sun's rays, filtered through hundreds of meters of water, provide just enough illumination for vision to remain useful, but only just. It is a zone of contradictions, vast in 3 dimensions, yet crowded with life, permanently cold, yet teeming with biological activity, dark yet illuminated by the living lights of bioluminescent organisms. For a young oarfish, this is now home, and it must learn to survive here. The oarfish's primary challenge is the same one facing all life: acquiring energy. Food in the mesopelagic zone is less abundant than in surface waters, but it is still present in significant quantities. The zone undergoes a daily transformation known as the Deal vertical migration, the largest migration of biomass on Earth, though most humans are unaware it's happening. Each night, countless small fishes, squid, crustaceans, and gelatinous organisms rise from the mesopelagic zone toward the surface to feed on the abundant plankton. Each dawn, they descend again, fleeing the light and the surface predators that hunt by sight. The oarfish does not participate in this migration. It is a permanent resident of the twilight zone, and it feeds on whatever prey crosses its path. krill, small fishes, jellies, salps, and other gelatinous zooplankton. Its feeding strategy is one of efficient opportunism. The oarfish hangs vertically in the water column, that distinctive posture that so many observers have noted, its head pointed upward, its body extending down into the darkness below. This posture has several advantages. It minimizes the fish's visual profile. From below, a predator sees only a thin line rather than a long body, and it positions the fish perfectly to detect and capture prey. The feeding strike, when it comes, is quick. The oarfish's mouth is small, protrusible, adapted for suction feeding. When a krill or small fish comes within range, the mouth shoots forward, creating a vacuum that sucks in the prey. There are no teeth to tear or grind. Food is swallowed whole. This is not the dramatic predation of a shark or tuna. It is subtle, efficient, conservative of energy. Everything about the oarfish's ecology is about energy conservation. As the juvenile oarfish feeds and grows, its body continues to elongate. New vertebrae form, new segments of dorsal fin appear. Growth in fishes is generally indeterminate, unlike mammals, which stop growing once they reach adult size. Fish continue to grow throughout their lives, though the rate slows with age. For an oarfish, this means that size is roughly correlated with age. A 5-meter oarfish is probably quite young, perhaps only a few years old. A 15-meter specimen might be decades old, though we can only speculate, as we have no reliable way to age these creatures. The years pass in a rhythm dictated by feeding and avoiding being fed upon. The oarfish has few predators as an adult, but as a juvenile, anything larger and faster is a potential threat. Sharks occasionally venture into the mesopelagic zone. Large marlins and swordfish hunt here. And there are other deep-sea predators, the lancetfish again, with its fangs and voracious appetite, the deep-sea dogfish sharks, even large squid might target a young oarfish. The oarfish's defences are mostly passive. Its silver coloration provides camouflage in the dim light. From above, it blends with the faint glow filtering down. From below, it matches the darkness of the abyss. Its thin profile makes it hard to see edge on, and if threatened, it can swim with surprising speed. That long dorsal fin rippling in powerful waves that propel it through the water. But mostly, the oarfish relies on rarity and the vastness of its habitat. In an ocean of such immensity, most predators and prey simply never encounter each other. Phase 4. Maturity. At some point, and again we don't know exactly when, the oarfish reaches sexual maturity. This might occur when the fish reaches 5 or 6 meters in length, or it might not happen until it's much larger. Different species of fish mature at different sizes and ages, and we have too little data on oarfish to be certain. What we do know is that mature oarfish are solitary. Unlike many fishes, which form schools or at least aggregate in productive areas, oarfish are almost always observed alone. Every sighting report, every underwater video shows a single fish moving through the water in splendid isolation. This makes sense for a creature living in such a vast three-dimensional environment. Schooling is an anti-predator strategy that works best in 2 dimensions, in environments where you can see your schoolmates. In the mesopelagic zone, visibility is measured in meters at best. Schooling would provide no benefit, and might even be detrimental, increasing competition for the scarce food resources. But this solitary existence poses a challenge when it comes time to reproduce. How do oarfish find each other in the vastness of the ocean? We don't know. Many deep-sea fishes use bioluminescence for communication and mate attraction, glowing lures and patterns that flash signals through the darkness. But oarfish, as far as we know, are not bioluminescent. They must rely on other senses. One possibility is chemical communication. Many fishes release pheromones into the water, chemical signals that advertise their reproductive state. In the relatively still waters of the mesopelagic zone, such chemical trails might persist for hours or even days, providing a breadcrumb trail that other oarfish could follow. The oarfish's lateral line system, so sensitive to water movements, might also detect the distinctive swimming patterns of another oarfish from considerable distances. Or there might be specific spawning grounds, areas where oarfish aggregate at certain times of year, guided by environmental cues we haven't yet identified. This is one of the great mysteries of oarfish biology, and it's a mystery that applies to many deep-sea fishes. The ocean is so vast, the distance is so immense. How do rare, solitary creatures ever find each other to mate? And yet they must, or they wouldn't exist. The very presence of oarfish in our oceans is proof that they've solved this problem, even if we haven't yet figured out how. When mating does occur, sometime, somewhere in ways we can only imagine, the cycle begins again. The female releases her eggs, the male his milt, and a new generation begins its journey through the water column and through time. Phase 5. Old Age and Death. What happens to an old oarfish? How long do these creatures live? What finally ends their existence? These questions, like so many others about oarfish, remain largely unanswered. We have no confirmed maximum age for oarfish. Some researchers have speculated that the largest specimens, those approaching or exceeding 30 feet, might be several decades old, but this is educated guesswork rather than established fact. What we do know is how many oarfish end their days, cast ashore, dead or dying, on beaches around the world. These strandings are how most people encounter oarfish, and they're the source of many sea serpent legends. A 20-foot silver fish with a red mane, washed up on a beach, must have been an extraordinary sight in earlier centuries, seeming to confirm every sailor's tale of monsters in the deep. But why do oarfish strand themselves? The answer, almost certainly, is that they don't, at least not intentionally. Oarfish that wash ashore are almost always dying or already dead. Many show signs of disease or injury. Others may have been caught in storms or unusual currents that swept them from their normal depths. And there's another factor. Oarfish that rise too quickly from deep water suffer the same fate as human divers who ascend without decompressing. The gases dissolved in their tissues come out of solution, forming bubbles that can cause tissue damage and death. An oarfish that finds itself in surface waters, whether due to disorientation, illness, or other factors, cannot easily return to the depths. The pressure difference is too great, the damage too severe. For such a fish, stranding is not a choice but an inevitable consequence of being out of its element. In Japan, the folklore says that oarfish beach themselves before earthquakes. There's a certain logic to this idea. If seismic activity somehow disrupted the deep ocean, perhaps it would affect deep-dwelling creatures. But scientific investigations have found no correlation between oarfish strandings and subsequent earthquakes. The myth persists because people remember the dramatic conjunctions and forget the many times oarfish appeared without earthquakes, or earthquakes occurred without oarfish appearances. It's a reminder of how readily humans find patterns in random events, especially when those events involve creatures as strange as oarfish. More likely, most oarfish deaths occur in the deep, in the darkness, beyond any human observation. An old fish, weakened by age or disease, might fall prey to a shark or large squid, or it might simply die. its body drifting downward through the water column, falling through the mesopelagic zone, past the bathypelagic zone, down to the abyssal plain thousands of meters below. There, in the eternal cold and darkness, bacteria and scavengers would reduce the body back to its constituent elements: carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus. The elements that once formed a living oarfish would be recycled into the deep-sea ecosystem, perhaps to be incorporated into the bodies of other creatures, perhaps eventually to rise again with deep ocean currents and begin the cycle anew. This is how most oarfish must end. Not dramatically, but quietly, their deaths part of the great biological pump that moves nutrients through the ocean's depths. Only the rare few that wash ashore become visible to us, momentarily bridging the gap between their world and ours. Part 4. Biology and Adaptations. To truly appreciate the oarfish, we must look more closely at the remarkable adaptations that allow it to thrive in one of Earth's most challenging environments. The oarfish is not merely a long fish, it is a masterclass in biological engineering, a suite of specialized features refined over millions of years. Let us begin with the skeleton. The oarfish possesses the longest vertebral column of any bony fish, with over 400 vertebrae strung together like beads on a thread. But these are not ordinary vertebrae. They are lightweight, somewhat fragile compared to the robust vertebrae of surface-dwelling fishes. This reduced density serves a crucial function: buoyancy. In the deep sea, where swim bladders are difficult to maintain due to pressure, many fishes rely on lipid deposits and lightweight skeletons to achieve neutral buoyancy. The oarfish has taken this strategy to an extreme. Its entire skeleton is built for lightness, reducing the energy needed to maintain position in the water column. The musculature too is specialized. The oarfish has relatively little muscle mass compared to active swimmers like tuna or mackerel. This makes sense. The oarfish is not a pursuit predator that needs explosive speed. Its muscles are tuned for endurance, for the slow, continuous movements that maintain its vertical posture and propel it through the water with minimal energy expenditure. The muscle tissue itself is adapted to function in cold water, with proteins that remain flexible at temperatures just above freezing, where the muscles of tropical fishes would become stiff and inefficient. And then there is that extraordinary dorsal fin, stretching from behind the head to the tip of the tail, containing over 400 individual fin rays. This structure is unlike anything else in the fish world. Each fin ray is independently controlled by its own set of muscles, allowing for incredibly fine-grained control of movement. The fin can ripple in waves, with each segment moving in a precise sequence to create thrust. It can undulate in different patterns to achieve different types of movement: forward, backward, up, down, or rotation. Hydrodynamic studies suggest that this mode of locomotion is extremely efficient, creating steady propulsion with minimal turbulence. It's an elegant solution to the problem of movement in a three-dimensional environment where every calorie counts. The pelvic fins, reduced to those long oar-like ribbons, may serve a sensory rather than locomotory function. The paddle-like tips contain numerous nerve endings and might be used to detect vibrations or chemical gradients in the water. Some researchers have suggested they could also be used in a fishing line strategy, where the fish dangles these appendages to attract small fishes or crustaceans, though this remains speculative. The oarfish's sensory systems are equally impressive. Those large eyes are optimized for scotopic vision in very low light. The retinas contain a high density of rod cells, the photoreceptors responsible for black and white vision in dim conditions. Color vision would be useless in the twilight zone, where the only light is monochromatic blue. The eyes are positioned to look upward primarily, allowing the fish to scan the water column above for the silhouettes of prey against the faint background light. The lateral line system deserves special mention. All fishes possess lateral lines, a series of sensory organs along the body that detect water movements and pressure changes. But in the oarfish, this system is exceptionally well developed. Given the fish's extreme length, its lateral line can detect disturbances across a much greater spatial range than in shorter fishes. This essentially gives the oarfish a much larger sensory bubble, allowing it to detect prey or predators from farther away. In the darkness of the mesopelagic zone, where vision has limited range, this extended mechanosensory perception is invaluable. The oarfish's coloration, that spectacular silver sheen overlaid with red fins, is also functional. The silver comes from guanine crystals deposited just beneath the skin. These crystals act as mirrors, reflecting whatever light strikes them. In the blue-tinted dimness of the mesopelagic zone, this makes the oarfish's body nearly invisible from most angles. The red coloration of the fins might seem counterproductive, but red wavelengths are the first to be absorbed as light penetrates water. By the time you reach 100 meters depth, red light is completely absent. Thus, red pigmentation appears black in the deep sea, a clever camouflage strategy used by many deep-dwelling organisms. The internal anatomy reveals further adaptations. The oarfish's heart is relatively small, reflecting its low activity level. Its gill system is efficient, extracting oxygen from water where dissolved oxygen levels are lower than at the surface. The digestive system is adapted to process small prey items. There's a long, coiled intestine that maximizes nutrient absorption from each meal. And throughout the body, tissues are rich in lipids, providing both energy storage and buoyancy control. One particularly fascinating aspect of oarfish biology is their apparent fragility out of their native environment. Oarfish that are brought to the surface, whether caught in nets or stranded, are almost always in poor condition. Their bodies begin to fragment, sections of the tail breaking off. This has led to speculation about whether oarfish might possess some form of autotomy, the ability to shed body parts when threatened. But more likely, this fragmentation is simply a consequence of tissue damage from rapid pressure changes and handling. In their native environment, at stable temperatures and pressures, oarfish are undoubtedly more robust than they appear when we encounter them. Part 5. Role in the ecosystem. Every organism plays a role in its ecosystem, and the oarfish, despite its rarity and solitary nature, is no exception. To understand this role, we must first understand the mesopelagic ecosystem itself, one of Earth's largest and least understood biological communities. The mesopelagic zone is sometimes called the ocean's twilight zone, but it might better be called its engine room. This mid-depth layer is where much of the ocean's biological activity occurs. During daylight hours, it serves as a refuge for countless organisms hiding from surface predators. At night, it sends forth that great migration of biomass, as billions of small creatures rise to feed in surface waters. The mesopelagic zone is also where much of the ocean's carbon sequestration happens. Organic matter drifting down from surface waters is consumed and respired here, with the resulting carbon dioxide often remaining trapped in deep water masses for centuries. Within this ecosystem, the oarfish occupies the role of a specialized predator, feeding primarily on small gelatinous organisms and zooplankton. This dietary niche is crucial. Gelatinous zooplankton, jellies, salps, pyrosomes, ctenophores, often bloom in enormous numbers, and they can have significant impacts on ecosystem dynamics, by competing with fish larvae for food or by consuming vast quantities of plankton. Predators that can efficiently consume these gelatinous organisms help regulate their populations. The oarfish's feeding strategy, hovering vertically with minimal movement, is particularly well suited to capturing gelatinous prey. Unlike small fishes or crustaceans, which can be fast and evasive, jellies and salps move relatively slowly. They're essentially drifting, using their own forms of gentle propulsion but rarely capable of rapid escape. For the oarfish, with its suction-feeding mouth, these organisms are ideal prey. Abundant, relatively easy to capture, and surprisingly nutritious despite their high water content. But the oarfish is also prey, at least in its younger stages. Juvenile oarfish, before they reach the size where few predators can tackle them, are likely food for the many deep-water predators that hunt in the mesopelagic zone. Lancetfish, with their enormous fangs and voracious appetites, are probably significant predators of young oarfish. Various shark species that hunt in deep water, cookie-cutter sharks, gulper sharks, lantern sharks, might take young oarfish opportunistically, and certainly the largest predators of the open ocean, marlins, swordfish, large tuna, occasionally venture into the depths and might encounter oarfish. Adult oarfish, due to their size, have far fewer predators. The most significant threats probably come from large sharks. Great whites, makos, and tiger sharks have all been documented at depths where oarfish occur, and a large oarfish, despite its length, is not particularly robust or fast-swimming. It could be vulnerable to a determined shark attack. Large squid might also pose a threat. In the deep ocean, where squid can grow to enormous sizes, an oarfish would not necessarily have a size advantage. When oarfish die, their bodies contribute to the biological pump, that crucial process by which carbon and nutrients are transported from surface waters to the deep sea. An oarfish carcass, sinking through the water column, provides food for scavengers at various depths. Hagfish, those primitive jawless fishes that specialize in consuming carrion, would feast on an oarfish carcass that reached the seafloor. Amphipods, deep-sea crabs, and a host of other scavengers would join the feast. Eventually, bacteria would complete the decomposition process, releasing nutrients back into the water where they would become available to other organisms or be carried by deep ocean currents to distant locations. There's another way to think about the oarfish's ecological role, one that's more speculative but intriguing. In an ecosystem where encounters between organisms are rare, where prey and predator alike must search vast volumes of water to find what they need, the oarfish's extraordinary length could be seen as an adaptation for maximizing encounter rates. A fish, 30 feet long, sweeps through more water, encounters more prey items than a fish only 3 feet long, all else being equal. The oarfish's body plan might be, in essence, a biological trawl net, maximizing the chances of encountering food in a sparse environment. This perspective suggests that the oarfish, far from being an oddity, a biological joke, might actually represent an optimal solution to the challenges of life in the mesopelagic zone. It's a humbling thought that what appears strange to us might be perfectly, elegantly suited to an environment we barely understand. Part 6. Human Connection and Conservation. For most of human history, the oarfish existed at the very edge of knowledge and imagination. It was the source of sea serpent legends, the mysterious monster that sailors saw rising from the depths, the dragon that graced medieval maps. Even today, when an oarfish washes ashore, it makes international news. Social media lights up with photos and speculation. The fish is so outside our ordinary experience that it forces us to confront the strangeness of our own planet. the vast portions of Earth that remain alien to us. In various cultures, oarfish have acquired different meanings and stories. In Japanese folklore, as we've noted, they are messengers from the sea god's palace, harbingers of earthquakes. This belief gained renewed attention after a series of oarfish strandings along the Japanese coast in 2010, before the devastating Tohoku earthquake and tsunami of 2011. The temptation to see connection was overwhelming, even though scientists found no statistical correlation. It's a reminder of humanity's need to find patterns, to believe that the natural world is sending us messages, especially when it shows us something as extraordinary as an oarfish. In Western cultures, oarfish have contributed to sea serpent mythology for centuries. Sailors' descriptions of long, serpentine creatures with red fins and horse-like heads match oarfish anatomy closely enough that many cryptozoologists and marine biologists believe most historical sea serpent sightings were actually oarfish encounters. When an injured or dying oarfish comes to the surface, perhaps undulating at the wave's surface, it would indeed look remarkably like the sea serpents described in old texts. But what is the current state of oarfish populations? Are these remarkable creatures in danger? The honest answer is that we don't know. This might seem like an unsatisfying answer, but it's the truth. Oarfish are never targeted by fisheries. They have no commercial value and are not good to eat. They are occasionally caught as bycatch in deep-water trawls or long lines, but this appears to be relatively rare. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, has not assessed oarfish for its red list of endangered species, largely because there's insufficient data to determine their population status. This data deficiency is itself a conservation concern. We cannot protect what we don't understand. We don't know if oarfish populations are stable, increasing, or decreasing. We don't know what impacts climate change might be having on their deep-water habitat. We don't know if ocean acidification, which is affecting so many marine species, impacts oarfish directly or indirectly through effects on their prey. What we do know is that the deep ocean is changing. It is warming, though more slowly than surface waters. Oxygen minimum zones, regions of ocean with very low dissolved oxygen, are expanding as the ocean warms and holds less oxygen. These changes could affect the mesopelagic ecosystem in profound ways, potentially altering the distribution and abundance of prey species that oarfish depend on. There's also the growing interest in deep-sea mining and industrial fishing at mesopelagic depths. Some fishing interests have looked at the immense biomass of the mesopelagic zone, all those small fishes and crustaceans that undergo the Deal vertical migration, and seen potential for new fisheries. If industrial-scale fishing begins in the mesopelagic zone, it could have cascading effects on the entire ecosystem, including impacts on oarfish even if they're not directly targeted. Conservation of oarfish, then, is really about conservation of the deep ocean more broadly. It's about recognizing that the mesopelagic zone, despite being out of sight, is not out of importance. It's about understanding that the health of deep-sea ecosystems is linked to the health of the entire ocean, and ultimately to the health of the planet. There are some positive developments. Advances in underwater technology are allowing scientists to study the mesopelagic zone in unprecedented detail. Remotely operated vehicles equipped with high-definition cameras can now operate at depths where oarfish live, and they're slowly building a library of observations. Autonomous underwater vehicles can patrol these depths for weeks at a time, collecting data on the distribution and behavior of deep-sea organisms, and new genetic techniques allow scientists to study population structure and connectivity, even for rare, widely distributed species like oarfish. Perhaps most exciting are the occasional live observations. In recent years, there have been a handful of encounters between human divers or submersibles and living oarfish. These encounters, captured on video, have provided invaluable insights into oarfish behaviour. We've seen how they move through the water, how they hold their distinctive vertical posture, how they respond to the presence of submersibles or divers. Each observation adds a small piece to the puzzle, helping us understand these remarkable creatures better. From a certain perspective, the oarfish is a conservation success story even without specific conservation efforts. Despite being one of the most distinctive and recognizable large fishes in the ocean, despite centuries of human ocean use, oarfish continue to thrive in their deep water habitat. They have persisted because they live in places humans rarely go, because they have no commercial value, because they occupy a niche that human activities have not yet significantly disrupted. In a world where so many species face existential threats from human activities, the oarfish reminds us that the vastness of the ocean still provides some sanctuary. But this should not make us complacent. The ocean is finite, and human reach grows ever longer. The conservation of oarfish ultimately depends on our willingness to treat the deep ocean not as an inexhaustible resource or a dumping ground, but as a precious ecosystem deserving of respect and protection. Part 7. Final Thoughts. We began our journey with an image, a solitary oarfish, rising vertically through the twilight waters, its silver body undulating, its scarlet crest rippling in slow waves. We have followed this creature from microscopic egg to enormous adult, from surface waters to the deep, through challenges and mysteries we're only beginning to understand. The oarfish's life cycle is insane not because it is violent or dramatic, but because it unfolds in an alien environment, following rules we're still learning to comprehend. It is a life lived in darkness and cold, in three-dimensional space where solitude and efficiency are paramount. What can the oarfish teach us? Perhaps humility above all. Here is one of the largest fishes on Earth, and yet we've never seen one spawn. We don't know how long they live. We can't estimate their populations. Despite our technological sophistication, vast portions of our own planet remain mysterious. But the oarfish also teaches us about adaptation, about evolution's extraordinary solutions to survival. That impossibly elongated body, propelled by a single undulating fin, seems absurd until you understand its environment. Then it becomes brilliant, a masterwork refined over millions of years. The oarfish exists at the boundary between known and unknown. When one washes ashore or appears before a diver's camera, it brings us a message from the deep. Not a prophecy of earthquakes, but something more important. A reminder that wonders still exist, that mysteries remain, that discoveries await. From translucent egg to solitary adult, through years or decades in the cold darkness, this is a life lived entirely outside human experience, a biography written in a language we're only beginning to read. Somewhere at this very moment, an oarfish hangs vertically in the water column, its great length extending into darkness, its eyes searching dim waters above, its dorsal fin rippling in slow, hypnotic waves. It has been doing this for longer than our species has existed, and with wisdom and care it will continue long after we're gone. That is the true wonder of the oarfish. It is proof that our planet still holds mysteries, that life thrives in the most challenging environments, that the ocean remains the largest unexplored frontier on our own world. The oarfish swims on, magnificent and mysterious, a dragon of the deep made real, the solitary monarch of the mesopelagic realm. If you enjoyed this episode of Animal Uncovered, following the podcast is the best way to support the show. And if there's an animal you want us to uncover next, leave a review or comment and let us know. Until next time.